Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the In-Depth series. My name is Pooja Dwivedi. Now we are, of course, at a precious time when the budget gets launched for every year. So this is going to be the last full-fledged budget of the union government, because in the upcoming year, 2024, we are going to have our elections, the Lok Sabha elections. Points of discussion will be crisp, to the point, and you will understand how does a government formulate its budget. One for all, let us talk about the backdrop. On February 1st, Finance Minister Shri Nirmala Sitharaman will present the union budget for the upcoming financial year, that is 2023-2024, and this will be the last full-fledged budget for the current government, and that is why it is important, because whenever budget is there, it has a lot of to do with, whenever elections are upcoming, then it has a lot to do with populism. So we are set to see if this budget is going to be a populist one or not. And of course, it has been shaped by the political development of the current scenario. What is budget? Is the word budget anywhere given in the Constitution? No, it is not. According to Article 112 of the Indian Constitution, the budget is known as annual financial statement. And it is a statement of the estimated receipts. Whose receipts? The government's receipts, which are made up of tax revenue, non-tax revenue. Other than that, many other things are also there. And expenditure of the government in the current financial year. That could be from expenditure such as the salaries that are to be given. Other than that, the allocation of amount that is to be done for different schemes present and past. And this budget is for the fiscal year 1st April of the current year. And the fiscal year actually is the 1st April of the current year, and it ends on the 31st March of the following year. All right, remember that. Now, if we talk about what are the basic concepts when it comes to the formulation of the budget. See, certain factors dictate the formulation of a budget. First, the purpose of making the budget is to understand the total amount of money that the government will raise in the coming year. That could range from taxation, that could range from disinvestment, that could range from selling of assets, and many other things. So this is actually total receipts. Okay, total receipts. The second point that the government has in mind is the total amount of money it will spend, as I have already told you. This is known as total expenditure. Total expenditure. Then the third one is the total amount of money it will borrow from the market to plug the gap between what it spends and what it earns. So this is fiscal deficit. Okay, so supposedly I am the government. I have ensured that, okay, what I will have to spend, 10 rupees I will have to spend in this particular year. My revenue is 8 rupees, but I have this gap of 2 rupees. My revenue is less, my expenditure is a lot. So I will borrow from the market. So this 2 rupees will be the fiscal deficit. Now, when I take these two into account, 8 plus 2, I have 10. And then I have to spend this 10 on the public for various schemes and everything. So this is what the government, first of all, ensures. Forces that shape a budget include certain demands. So demands can be placed in 3 different categories. First category is people such as us. We want lower taxation or a higher rate of exemption. Supposedly, I have a salary of X. So this year, I might have X rupees of salary per year. I might have X plus 1 in the upcoming year. So when that happens, I will end up paying more to the government if the taxation has been increased. My purchasing power will become less. So what are the cases when I can talk about taxation being less? Because inflation is very high. First, that. Secondly, in order to boost demand, the government has to give me some money in my hand so that I can demand, I can have purchasing power. So these are certain cases when we can expect that taxation will be low. Second is the second set of demands is for people and firms that want wanting higher or newer subsidies. These are for certain industries which are transitioning in nature, such as if we talk about conventional energy to greener energy. For industries which are coal based, we have to go towards industries which are solar based. So solar objects which are helping us in order to transition to greener energy, they're not very affordable in nature because the cost of making them is high. If the government is giving me certain subsidies, then I can ensure that I will pass on the profit with profit to the consumer, in a sense that I am not losing money from my pocket. The government is filling my pocket, but I am able to ensure that the customer is getting at it at an affordable rate, it at on affordable rate. So that is why I want higher subsidies. Similarly, it is for those industries which are export oriented, so that the exports of India can become competitive in nature. So these are the certain industries which are wanting higher subsidies or newer subsidies. Then we have the third group. This group demands something called fiscal rectitude or prudence. It wants to raise the taxation and lower the subsidy. This group is not very, not very helpful currently for the government. What is the scope of budget? See, generally what happens when a union budget comes into place, people cry that this budget is going to be the maker or breaker of the government. Earlier it used to be true, but now it's not so. See, it is expected that as the size of the union budget increases, the higher government expenditure will push the economy forward. This is the first thing. See, earlier when the union government used to spend a lot, what used to happen, that it became the prime mover of the economy. But now states are spending much more than the union government. See, nowadays the size of the union budget is smaller than that of the combined budgets of all the state governments. So earlier, as we see, if we compare the budget of the latest budget of the union government and the state government, there is a gap. The state government are spending this much and the union government are spending this much. So now it is no longer the prime mover. And rupees 40 lakh crore, one thing that we have to understand, that this rupees 40 lakh crore which the union government tends to spend for the upcoming financial year, it is not completely new, because only 93% of this 40 lakh crore is already spent by the government or is already allocated to different schemes. Now for newer expenditure, it is just going to be about 7% of the newer expenditure. So it is not going to make a big difference, okay? Because the first 93% goes into expenditures that are already being committed, So it is not going to make a much larger difference. Now, if we talk about the preparation of the union budget, there are certain steps that have to be followed. In order to make a budget for the upcoming year, nominal GDP, or what will be the size of the economy in the upcoming year, has to be assessed. That will be done on the basis of the nominal GDP of the current year. Nominal GDP is nothing but the total market value of all the goods and services which are produced in India in a financial year, and generally one often uses real GDP. Real GDP is nominal GDP adjusted the inflation. Okay, so when adjustment of inflation has been done on nominal GDP, then we will get the real GDP. And once the government knows the nominal GDP of the current year, then it uses this number to project the likely nominal GDP for the next year. But nominal GDP has time and again referred to as Lord Ganesh. So the budget at a glance document of the union government clearly mentions this projection. Last year's union budget stated the following: GDP for BE 2022-23 has been projected as this much, assuming 11.1% of growth over the estimated GDP of this much crore for 2021-22. So you can see the difference. Now, next is fiscal deficit, which is the difference between the expenditure and the expenditure and the revenue. Yes. So governments generally are supposed to spend more than they earn, because then only the government can be seen as a welfare government. So over time, India instituted strict rules on limiting how much it can raise from the market, because if the government is going to raise money from the market, what about other players? So it will crowd out. So that is also a problem. This is done by the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, which has dictated that the total borrowings cannot be more than 3% of the nominal GDP. Remember this, the government cannot borrow more than 3% of the nominal GDP in order to ensure that it is not taking up entire market's money, and none is left for the private players and other market players as well. Other than that, once the government has arrived at an estimate of the nominal GDP, then it calculates the total amount of money it can raise from borrowings. Then comes total revenue. Total revenue is actually how much the government is going to earn through taxation and other things. Okay, and there are three main ways to raise revenue. First is tax revenue, by putting taxes, GST and income tax and other sort of tax. Non-tax, such as what the dividends the government is going to earn through government owned enterprises, and then what is raised through disinvestment of public sector undertaking. So all this is used for understanding how the budget is made. Moving again, total expenditure is the total amount of money that the government is going to spend on different schemes. These schemes can be either old or new. And the next step is to apportion the money among different ministries and departments. So then when it has every data in hand, then it can understand what amount of money it is going to allocate to different ministry, and that completes the total budget making process. Now in the parliament, it is passed through 6 stages. First of all, the presentation of the budget is done. Then comes the general discussion of the budget. This is the most important part. When general discussion is done, then comes the scrutiny of the budget by different departments, and voting on demand for grants is done. Then appropriation bill is passed, and finally it is followed by financial bill. So you have to keep in mind the 6 stages. Remember, it can also be asked in your prelims examination that arrange the following stages of the passing of the budget in the parliament in the correct order, and this order can be given and you have to answer it. Now I will attach a question at the end of the this thing in the comment segment only. You have to answer it, and I will take the names of those students who have answered that question correctly and announce your names in the upcoming you can say episode. So let me take the names of those students who have answered the last question correctly. So I will take the names of those students who will answer that question. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching and stay updated.